Hello, my dear students. I'm Ifat, your course teacher, and today I'm going to discuss about your second part of classification. In our last class, we already know about bacterial structure and some classification parts. Today, we will discuss about other classifications of bacteria. So let's get started. First of all, we can classify bacteria on the basis of optimum pH growth, or you can also say on the basis of pH. And we can classify bacteria on the basis of pH by three. First of all is acidophiles, then alkaliphiles, and then neutrophiles. And in case of acidophiles, as we know, acids, whenever we go for pH range, whenever it's less than 5, it is actually acidic. Okay, so pH near 3 will be acidophiles. In this pH, these kinds of bacteria grow well, or when the environment is acidic. And example is like thiobacillus, thioxidans, or thermoplasma, sulfolobus. These kinds of bacteria actually example of acidophiles. Then our second one, that is alkaliphiles. It's actually pH of 8 and 10.5. Within this acidic environment, it can grow better. And example is like that, Vibrio cholera, or optimum pH of growth like 8.2. And in case of neutrophils, pH will be 6.5 to 7.5. As we know, in pH range, which is neutral for the environment. So the bacterial growth will be best in neutral pH like 6.5 to 7.5. For example, E. coli. That was our bacterial classification based on pH. Then our another very important classification, that is actually based on availability of gas, that is mainly oxygen. So first of all, the classification will be obligate aerobes. Here we can check that word, that is obligate. Obligate means that is mandatory. So for that kinds of bacterial growth, bacteria needs oxygen must. Okay, and if the bacteria oxygen is not present there or absent there, bacteria cannot grow. For example, Mycobacterium and Bacillus. Second one is facultative anaerobes. Here is the word anaerobes. That means these kinds of bacteria grow best in absence of oxygen. Okay, but it's not like that. If oxygen is present, it will die. Like those bacteria that do not require oxygen, but can use if it is available. Okay, that means it is facultative. It can grow both in the presence of oxygen and carbon dioxide. But normally it do not grow any kinds of oxygen, but if needed, if present in the environment, it can use. And their metabolism type is mostly oxidative and fermentative. Example like E. coli or Salmonella. Then our third one is aerotolerant anaerobes. And aerotolerant means it is anaerobes. Anaerobes, I already mentioned that. That is without the presence of oxygen, it can grow or it can live. But here is a word like aerotolerant. That means aero means oxygen, tolerant means it can tolerate. So these bacteria actually do not require oxygen for its growth, but it can tolerate the presence of oxygen. So it's called the aerotolerant bacteria. Okay. For example, lactobacillus. Then our fourth one is microaerophils. There is a word micro. That means it can, and it is aero. That means it can survive in the presence of low concentration of oxygen. Okay, and these kinds of bacteria also do not require oxygen, but it can grow in low concentration of oxygen. Okay, and example like Campylobacter. Then our fifth one is obligate anaerobes. That like the before, obligate means mandatory. So these kinds of bacteria can grow only in absence of oxygen. Okay, and oxygen is very harmful for that. For example, Patrococcus or Methanococcus, these kinds of bacteria is called obligate anaerobes. That means they will grow best in the absence of oxygen. If oxygen present there, they cannot grow properly. And our last one is capnophiles based on oxygen requirement. This kind of bacteria actually require carbon dioxide for their growth. So it's called the capnophiles. And it's also called like that, they're carbon dioxide loving organism. Okay, example like Campylobacter, Helicobacter pylori. These kinds of bacteria is called capnophiles. Okay, so these are our classification based on gaseous requirement. Then our third classification is based on morphology. If you think that what is morphology actually, morphology actually means what you can check the shapes, okay, or what is physical appearance. Based on that we can also classify bacteria. So first group is called coccus group, then it's called bacilli, and then other groups are called Microplasma, Spirochaetes, Rickettsia and Chlamydia, and then Actinomycetes. It's six classification actually based on the morphology of bacteria. So in case of coccus, on the basis of their arrangement, okay, can parts are classified. Okay, for example, Diplococcus, Streptococcus, Staphylococcus, Tetrad, Sarcina, all of the groups of classifications actually based on the pairs, okay, or arrangement of the bacteria. For example, coccus means coccus will be present in pair. Okay, for example, Neisseria gonorrhea, this is an example. Streptococcus means it will present in chain, like Streptococcus salivarius. Then Staphylococcus means it will present in bunch, Staphylococcus aureus. Then tetrad coccus in group or four. Okay. Then last one is Sarcina, that coccus in cubical arrangement. For example, Sporosarcina. So that is actually different kinds of arrangement. You can check there. It is a diplococci. Okay, that means it present in pair. Then it is a tetrad. It present in four. It is a sarcina. It present in cubical size. And streptococci means it present in like a chain. Okay. And here the arrangement is like the coccus, but it's our bacillus arrangement, that like Coccobacilli or Mycobacteria, okay, or spore forming rods. These are the arrangement how they present in the environment. So in case of bacilli, these are mainly rod-shaped bacteria, and on the basis of arrangement we can also classify them like Coccobacilli, like Brucella, Streptobacillus, chain of rod-shaped bacteria. Then comma-shaped, that we call Vibrio cholera. Chinese letter shape, that means it's like Chinese letter, the shape is look like Chinese letter, for example Corynebacterium diphtheria. So these are two most important morphological classification, and these are the types how it look like, and the figure is show you how it's looking actually. Then our third classification, that is called Microplasma. They are cell wall lacking bacteria, that means they are bacteria but they lack of cell wall. Okay, also they known as Pneumonia like organism, it's called PPLO. And example like Mycoplasma pneumoniae. Then Spirochaetes, it's a spiral shaped bacteria, and example is just its name. Then Rickettsia and Chlamydia, it's our obligate intracellular parasite resemble bacteria. Okay, and these bacteria also just look like virus, and so it's named like Rickettsia and Chlamydia. And our last one is Actinomycetes. They are filamentous or branching structure, and they also resemble like fungus, look like fungus, but they are bacteria. For example, Streptomyces. So these are our morphological classification. Then our classification of bacteria based on gram staining. So if you go for that, you already know what is gram-positive bacteria and what is gram-negative bacteria. We just read it. We just read it in our last class on the basis of cell wall. Okay. So here these bacteria are called gram-positive bacteria. Which one? That is composed of thick peptidoglycan cell wall or peptidoglycan layer. And this layer can retain the purple color of crystal violet stain, or we can also say the color of indicator. Okay, so it's look like purple as they can just absorb the color. Okay, and whenever it just checked under light, it look like purple, like Staphylococcus, Streptococcus. And in case of gram-negative bacteria, we already know their cell wall is not so much thick. With that, they are also present a lipid bilayer, or we can also say outer membrane. And these gram-negative bacteria cannot retain that color, okay, as their um, cell wall is not so much thick. And whenever you just observe it under light, it look like pale reddish. Okay. An example is E. coli, Salmonella, mostly coliform bacteria are gram-positive, and mostly coccus type bacteria are, sorry, gram-negative, coliform, and coccus type bacteria are gram-positive bacteria. And here I have given a link where you can check the whole procedure of gram staining. For a better understanding, you must check it. Then the bacterial classification based on flagella. Actually, we know what is flagella. If you go for that figure, that is, there are some flagellar arrangement. Based on that arrangement, we have classified the bacteria. For example, that's called Atricus. In case of Atricus, what happened that our last one, bacteria without flagella. For example, Shigella. Then Peritricus. What is that? All over the cell surface. So if you go for all over the cell surface, so what will be the Peritricus? That is all over the cell surface is flagella present. It's called the Peritricus. For example, Salmonella, E. coli, that kinds of bacteria is called. Then Amphitrachus means bacteria having single or cluster of flagella or at both end of cell. Okay, that means both end of cell means it's like that. Okay, it is called the Amphitrachus. That means cluster of flagella both end. Okay, for example, aqueous pyrelium. And Lophotrachus means having a bundle of flagella at one end of cell. So whenever say that it's the one end of cell, that means it will be if we just delete it, and if we check it that whenever it's one end, so it will be like that, it's one end of cell. It's called the Lophotrachus, and like Pseudomonas. Then Monotrachus means it will be single flagella and one at the cell. That we did in the structure, just like look like that, like Vibrio cholera. So that is our flagellar arrangement bacteria and with their examples. Then that is their figure. That is Monotrichus, Lopho, Amphi, and Peritrichus, or 5 kinds of bacteria. Then our last one is spore-forming bacteria. Okay, in case of that, actually, these kinds of bacteria can produce spore within the bacterial cell. Okay, and we can divide in two groups: endospore and exospore-forming bacteria. In this kind, spore produced within the bacterial cell. For example, Bacillus, Clostridium. These kinds of bacteria can produce spore within the bacterial cell. And another one is actually spore produced outside the cell, like Methylocinians. Okay, Methylocinians, these kinds of bacteria that it produces spore just outer portion of the cell. Without that, we can also divide non-spore forming bacteria. That means whenever we classify the bacteria which is on a spore, it's two kinds: spore forming and non-spore forming. And spore forming we can divide into endo and exospore. And non-spore forming bacteria means that which do not produce a spore, like all other bacteria. Most of the bacteria is actually non-spore forming, like E. coli, Salmonella, Vibrio cholera, Streptococcus, okay, Micrococcus. All of the bacteria actually non-spore forming bacteria, and these Bacillus, Clostridium is called the spore forming bacteria. So actually that is our classifications that we learn now, and we also learned some classification in our last class. So that's for today. Thank you.